name's Simon Pickthall from Vanguard. Lovely to be here. I guess you've had 2 days of excitement and sharing brilliant ideas, inspiration, is that right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. I'm first going to come crashing down now and all end for the next hour, so I apologise in advance for that. But it's lovely to be here amongst friends and see some new faces and stuff. What I'm going to hope to do, it's like a heater blasting in your face, isn't it? Like a shampoo advert. That's not for my hair, I think. So yes, what I'm going to try and do for the next 40 minutes or so is just chat through why the systems we're rattling against are designed as they are, and some tactics based on some science on where we can go to try and do something about that. That's the hope anyway. I doubt we'll get that, but hopefully we'll have some fun together nonetheless. But it'd be good for me if it's all right just to go around and know who I'm talking to, if that's all right. So have you all introduced one another earlier? Sorry. Should we do it quickly then? If we do it quickly. So I know Julie, I know Chris, I know Joe.
So I'm Kevin. So I'm over from Dublin from an organisation called WARP. So we're a service provider in the southwest, mainly in the southwest of Dublin.
Brilliant. Lovely to meet you, Kevin. Lovely to meet you. That's Paul at the back with the camera. Hello. I know you, of course. Hello. You know each other, yes? So, cool. Liz. And
I'm Freddie.
Freddie, lovely to meet you.
And I'm from an organization representing service providers for people with disability in Europe.
Wonderful, lovely to meet you. And Raoul, of course.
From the local government of Catalonia.
Fantastic, lovely to see you.
I'm Kula from Greece, Athens.
Kula,
Yes.
lovely to meet you.
And
Lovely to
we
meet you.
run houses of support at women.
Fantastic. Oh, lovely people all together in one room. That's great. Well, it's lovely to meet you all. So yeah, I'm going to try and just run through some science and stuff. I've been privileged to work with a few people in the room, which is lovely. So talk about some of the stuff we've done. But what I'd really like to explore is what's going on, because it's pretty bloody obvious what needs to be done, the right thing, and all the conversations I always hear when I'm with lovely people like you, we know the right thing to do. So what's the reason why we can't? A little insight into your life there. Is that a theme tune? Joe?
Apologies, it's BBC breaking news.
Oh, fair enough.
Did you just ignore?
So, knowing Joe, it'll be a Sunderland update or something. Yeah. Sorry. So there's got to be something going on that means why these systems still carry on as they are. Good morning, I'm Simon, by the way.
I'm Ludmila.
Sorry, you're
Ludmila from
Ludmila.
Moldova.
Lovely to meet you. Lovely to meet you. And I want to sort of talk through what's caused that and what we can do to sort of sort that out. So the key thing to bear in mind is this relationship. Someone thought it was a good idea once, and that's the key to this. Someone had an assumption of, well, this is the best way to design the system, so they put it in place with a hope that they'll get good performance, in inverted commas. So good outcomes, want to high morale, low cost, and where appropriate, make money, whatever they want to be doing. So what's interesting about this is if we think it's a good idea, we put it in place. But sometimes we don't realize we've thought it's a good idea. So it can be like quite an unconscious thought. So an example, I work quite often in older people services, adult social care, that sort of stuff, the things Julie used to lead. So I remember I was teaching and one social worker came on the course and we were talking through this and she explained her system to me. She said, I went in and she told a real case. I went in last week to see this gentleman and she said, what matters to you? What's important to you? Great question. And the gentleman said, well, I'd like to keep my independence. I want to keep cooking. I really enjoy cooking, but my dexterity's really gone and my eyesight's gone to what's-its. So I'd really like to carry on. I said, oh, great, okay. And he said, I've seen these like large button microwaves you can get, which would enable me to keep doing my cooking without having to, do anything. I can still manage. And the social worker, and she was telling me, she was quite upset when she was explaining this, said, we don't have a budget line for big button microwaves, but I can get carers to come in the morning and the evening, and then we can get Meals on Wheels where they deliver the food to you at lunchtime. And that's what she had to do. So she went away and she did that. And in terms of outcome, what do we think about that? Is that a good outcome for that gentleman?
It's not good because he will lose his skills.
Exactly. He was very clear he wanted to keep them. Absolutely, yeah. In terms of morale for that social worker, how does that feel? How do you think?
Also not very good, but I do think that she can have another, let's say, way of solving problems. She can look maybe for charities. She can look for other resources in communities, and she can solve the problem because she is the first person near this.
Yeah. And what?
It depends how much the social worker is aware of the impact of their actions on the person.
Yeah.
Quality of life as well. So if the social worker is really embedded in service and systems, it's like, hey, I did really well there, I did what was needed, ticked off, case closed, on to the next person. Whereas if they're more aware of actually the person's quality of life, then absolutely they'd be going home just really shit.
Yes. And it's interesting in people's careers that your first ever thing, you're straight out of college, you've learned, you've got a social work degree, and you go in and you're faced with that, you go home feeling like shit. But over time, we protect ourselves mentally and we start to then say, oh, it's the only thing I'm allowed to do. It's how the system works. And it's our way of protecting ourselves. So then we're able to go home and sleep. So interesting. And from a cost perspective, is that a good use of money? It's bonkers, isn't it? She told me, and these are her rough figures. She's about 15 grand is what I put in. And the microwave is about 70 quid. So it's quite 50 grand per year. So it's quite a thing. So that's interesting. So what in their system made that social worker have to go down that route? What had they put in that system? What had been put in that system? What do you think?
Box, ticking a box and thinking in a box.
Ticking a box, yeah.
Because the person needs to think not in a box, but larger. And I think that this is not only about the system, this is also of social care, but this is also about the system of education.
Yeah.
How we educate social care workers.
Absolutely. So we've got this is the box you're allowed to operate in, and probably education and teaching. Cool. What other things have they put in that system that caused that to happen?
So there's fixed processes or outcomes.
Yeah.
So this is what. So there's a scope.
Yes.
That the service can do, and anything outside that, it fails to do.
So yeah, we've got this is your scope. And how do systems enforce that scope stuff in your experience?
Another question. I'm wondering, in your country, this social worker, she will be punished if she will act differently, find resources from communities.
Exactly. There may be negative consequences, punished if she does it wrong. Yeah, that's in the system.
In my country, at least, where we do not have social workers we have them from 1990, from 2006. They have more free hands to do what they would like to do.
But as you say, in this system, there's a punishment, or you get lots of hassle or supervision, we call it, which is
There's a paranoia that's about what if it goes wrong.
Yes.
So the upper echelons of the system are protecting themselves by insisting that everybody does stay in the box.
So this, sorry.
No, yeah, you find it in all services.
Yeah.
So you go, I say it respectfully, but you go to the doctor and ask for an opinion, as I recently did, and I said, well, would this that is already in existence have any implications? And he said, oh, that's not really my territory. Actually, if he gives me this cup, it's probably going to kill me because of something else that's already going on. And we're denying opportunity to people all the time. This is why people jump ship.
Yeah.
So I've got teachers and social workers who are now as volunteers.
Yeah.
Because the built-in passion that's been at the start of the journey is now gone.
Yeah, thrashed out of them.
It's been thrashed.
Yeah. So this neatly takes us to that top area about thinking and assumptions. So what were the assumptions that the leadership, or whoever created that system, had in their head when they put those controls in place? What were they thinking it would give them? Sorry? Efficiencies, yeah. We just stick in your small box and that will give us efficiencies. Cool. What else? What other assumptions were there?
So there's a narrow definition of need, if you like. So
Yeah.
We meet people's needs, but in a very, it's what we do, not how we do it.
And what was their assumptions by putting that narrow definition in? What were they hoping to achieve with that?
we talk about, I think you're talking some sort of basic standards, so somebody needs to be fed,
Yeah.
but not, not actually sort of the value piece and sort of, my control over that process.
And what was their thinking about saying we'll just do that basic standard stuff? What was their assumption or thinking about putting that in place? It's really important to get to behind the why. So why did they put that in place?
Equal approach to all consumers.
Wonderful, yeah. This is equality for people, absolutely.
That we can give to you.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. So, and the tricky difficulty is it's done with good intentions. So we think it'll be efficient. We think this is fairer. Actually, the consequences are exactly the opposite. But the assumption was this will be better. And that's the tricky bit about tackling these systems, is there is a strong assumptions at the top of them that if we give very strong, strict processes, small boxes to people, minimum standards, that is better. So when you tell them it's not, what do? What do human beings respond? How do they respond when you say what you think is wrong? What do we do as humans?
The people have various needs, and practically you need to various priorities of their needs.
Absolutely.
And
but the system doesn't.
Everybody is very different.
Yeah.
And what do you think is equal for somebody can be not fair?
So that's what I mean, but you all know the answer. But why isn't it being done everywhere? So when you say to these people, your assumptions are wrong, that small box is not more efficient, that small box is not equality, what do they say? What do how do humans respond when we're told our thinking is wrong? We get defensive, absolutely, yeah. It's just how we respond. Anyone who's ever been a teenager or has spoken to a teenager will know all about that. We get defensive. And what actually happens, the research is really cool. In the last 20 years, has anyone heard of the backfire effect? It's really awesome. You see it I'll talk about it in a little bit more detail after, but if you present someone with a really, really good argument that says their thinking is wrong, they dig their heels in further. They start being defensive and they start making up bonkers reasons why we can't change it. So actually, by arguing with them, you can dig their heels in even further and we set ourselves back further. So that's science. So if we know that, we can try different things. So what I'd like to do is now apply that to our system. So give me, 2 bonkers things you see happen in the system, problems in the system. 2 problems you see in the system. Duplication? Cool. Well, have a safe flight.
Thank you.
Bye,
Rose.
Nice to see you.
The main tool is
Yes.
Cool. So duplication. So is that the people working the system have to do lots and lots of duplicate tasks and
I was
stuff?
thinking more in terms of people being restricted with how they go in their lives, because the resources that are being used, they're not only being used inappropriately, but they're being they're not just getting what they need at the base level to meet their needs. It's like reactive or duplicating. It's more than what they actually need.
Right. Yes.
But it's hard.
Yeah. So we're throwing money to do things that actually don't make a good life, don't matter to people. Brilliant. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I think there's certain circumstances where it actually expedites the person's circumstances so that they eventually have a greater need.
Yeah.
So that by not recognising and responding to the microwave, that lady eventually could end up needing more support.
Yeah. So they're great. So we'll use those. Sorry, just write that down. Trying not to use my old man glasses.
Big restrictions, on this minimum support that they can give. Why do they need this person-centered planning? They don't.
Yeah. We're only going to give them this anyway.
They know what to give.
So we've got that sort of short-term minimum stuff. Great. So I'd like to take those 2 examples through this process again. So the performance we're seeing is we're throwing money at things that actually don't matter to people. What in the system has caused that to happen? What have we put in the system that means that happens?
we've made people think that services are the only solution.
Brilliant. Okay, so the system is the only thing that will work is services. Brilliant, and that it's relatively easy. But what's the assumption behind that?
Professionals know better.
Brilliant, and we've got all that stuff going on. So now we're into real, very helpful territory. Actually, when I'm bouncing against this system, and it might be just a representative I'm talking to, nurse, social worker, or the leader, in their heads is our professionals know best. Now that might be one of those little unconscious ones because they'll never say that. But their behavior is bang on that's I must know best given how I'm behaving. So now we're into even more tricky psychology because I don't even say it out loud. I don't recognize that I'm doing that, but I am. Wonderful, wonderful. I promise we'll get to how we can tackle this in a minute rather than just all the horrible stuff. And then the second one was that, we'll just do this short-term thing, even though it may cause more problems down the line. What in the system has caused that to happen? What might be the trigger or the thing in the system that means that happens?
I think these performance indicators that they have, because they need to achieve some performance indicators that also have been fixed in function of how money has the system to give.
Very insightful, absolutely, yeah. I have to do something quick or otherwise I get told off, punished, so I'll just do whatever, some short term. Fantastic. So the system is, we've got the performance indicators. What's the thinking and assumptions about the performance indicators? Why did they put them in place? What did they think they'd give them?
Ability to measure points.
Fantastic, yeah. We do things fast, so they must be good. That sort of stuff, yeah. So there's an assumption that performance indicators will improve or measure quality. Absolutely. So these now, the problem with this stuff, although it's called thinking and assumptions, they're sort of held in here. So this is, I feel I'm a professional, I know best. I feel performance indicators are better and they're going to drive good performance, they're going to measure quality. So once someone turns up, you clever people say, well, actually, that's absolute nonsense. I'm trying not to swear for the camera. That defensiveness starts, the heels start to dig in, and we double down and all that sort of stuff. Brilliant. So once we understand that, it helps us in how we can, what we call, intervene in that system and help people. The problem is, we might meet a social worker. Your point was very well made, Liz, about depends how they're thinking, how they're operating. They may be feeling really bad about all this stuff, or they might just be part of the system. We've just got used to it. Because they get punished, we learn quite fast as humans in a system. All right, if I do that, I get punished. If I'm strong, as you said, Chris, I'm off. So we lose good people. So the people you're talking to are the people you're talking to. The question is, are social workers, nurses, etc., are they sociopaths? Are they just don't care at all on a sort of brain chemical level or not? What do you think? How many sociopaths have you met in all your work? You're trying to think now. A few maybe, yeah. So I've met 3 in my 16 years of doing this, none of which are in this room, I stress, but only 3. Sociopaths do not tend to become social workers. They become politicians, they lead companies, or they're top sports people, weirdly enough, as well. They don't tend to become social workers. So you can take a call. They're probably not a sociopath. There's something else. It's likely to be the system forcing them to do that. So I'm just going to share another bit of research on people and how we respond, because that will really help us, because we can shout and scream at a social worker, but actually there's not a lot they can do if they're in that system. All they can do is leave, and we don't want them to leave, we want them to stay and sort it out. So I'm going to show you something now. I'll put this in the wrong order, never mind. Oh yeah, I'll do this. So these are 2 real scenarios, okay? So this first one, primary mental health. So mental health system, we all know all over the world, they're very stretched, very busy. I know someone who's a therapist who works in one of these teams, and that's how I heard about this. I haven't worked with them, but this is what happened. They're all stressed. So the boss turned up and said that. We're going to have a nice day, we're going to play some games, we're going to cheer everyone up. Then she said, unfortunately, we've also got to meet our targets, so we're going to have to work a little bit harder on the other days. But good intention. So the boss did this from good intention. She could see her team were very, very stressed. Good intentions. So they played their games. They had the day. And the person I know told me about it. I had a great day, he said. We were doing primal painting. which I was just throwing paint at a canvas. It felt fantastic, really good. But then they finished the day and came into the office the next day. The waiting list continued to grow and morale started to get worse. What they'd done is taken everyone out for a day and given them a nice time. They had done nothing to change the system, which we looked at before, nothing at all. So the system will remain the same. And unless you change my little box, tomorrow I'm going to have to stick in my little box. No matter how many games I play, I'm not going to be able to change my box tomorrow. You've got to do something about that in terms of leading the system. So contrast with this. This is, does anyone watch CSI programs, CSI Miami or New York and all that sort of thing, where they investigate crimes and find all the stuff? So this is a little bit less glamorous. This is CSI in the South Wales Valleys. So CSI Treorchy is not the same as CSI Miami, but they're finding fingerprints at scenes of crime and things like that. I just spent a day with the police. I know some of the senior officers and they said, all right, can you just do a day? So I did a day. And the police work very differently. They just crack on and sort stuff out. So the superintendent in charge of this listened about all this stuff about acting on the system. And because he's a police officer, he just did it. All right, okay. So he went out and he spent time with his team finding out what in the system was causing them problems. So they were using really quite old-fashioned bits of film. You wouldn't believe it to see it. Old-fashioned bits of film to pick up fingerprints. They had to go to a special lab, transported all over the place and all that sort of stuff. But they were looking at these really intently trying to see fingerprints on this screen. So they put the film and have a look at that, trying to find fingerprints. All this sort of stuff. There's this very classified, I won't tell you where I don't know where it is, classified lab where they store all the fingerprints, lots of expense. So and this is important, we have the Crown Prosecution Service in our country, so they're the people who are the prosecutors. You'll have the equivalent. So we want to prosecute these people, and they say every single scene you turn up to, you get fingerprints, regardless of whatever we're going to do with the case. So they just do it. So the superintendent just worked with his team and said, right, well, what would help? Digital cameras would be great, boss. Okay, and he got them digital cameras. There'd been tons of superintendents running this, but no one had actually asked them, what gets in the way of you doing your job? What wastes your time? Oh, digital cameras, got digital cameras. Saved a fortune. Loads of hassle. This was horrendously funny. He said, I just went down to Curry's and bought them new monitors, like we'd have at home. And they were going, blimey, you can see fingerprints everywhere. They just, because they had they had nicer, up-to-date monitors. Loads more fingerprints found. Then they spoke to the Crown Prosecution Service and said, you're asking us, we've got like 1,600 fingerprints in backlog. How many of these are you going to use? Oh yeah, we're not going to use that one. We're not going to use that one. We're not going to use that one. So they, because, we're not going to prosecute this person, or this person has pleaded guilty, or we've got other evidence, so we don't need it. But no one had bothered telling the fingerprint team. So they reduced their backlog from 1,500 cases to 6, just by doing those awesome things. 24 hours, they can turn things around. They've more identifications. So innocent people were more quickly found innocent, guilty people more quickly found guilty, and morale improved. Weird. They had sickness of 850 days per annum. They got it down to 100. They told me these figures, so they're sort of said, okay. Insane. But they didn't go on a day to do primal painting. The boss said, right, what gets in the way of you doing your job? And fixed it for them. And that's the problem when you're working with a social worker. They have very little control over this. The quality guru types say like 95% of the system is determined by the system. The outcome of the system is determined by the system, not the people that work in it. So these were very stressed, very busy people. They're now not stressed, not busy, because someone actually made it easy for them to do their job. So shouting at a social worker doesn't necessarily get us very far, which is tricky. This is a lovely quote. So you may bump into people who are nice humans, but their system doesn't let them do good things, the right things, the things you want them to do. So actually having a go at them, trying to influence them is a bit tricky. So what I want to do is talk through how we can do this. So the people who create the system, the assumptions, the thinking tend to be in charge. Sometimes they'll say, oh, I never came up with it, it must have been the people before me, but I've just kept it that way because that's what we've always done. That's okay. So if you can help them find out for themselves, you make a big difference. And this is where we fall into the traps, because often we go down a rational route. Surely these people, if I just explained to them that it should be different for each person, they'll just say yes. But as we've heard, they don't. Oh no, because my assumption is that'll be too expensive, or it won't be efficient, or whatever it is. But then we go, oh, here's some evidence. They're still not saying yes. That's weird. So we'll do some more data. We'll get Oxford to research it for us. So for 40 years, we've got evidence and research that proves what you're talking about is the right thing to do. It's much better for outcomes, much better for people's independence, much better for morale, and actually costs a lot less. So why aren't we doing it? And that's the thing. I work with a team of early years practitioners and leaders, so that's helping younger people. And they sent me this wonderful quote, I don't know if you can see. It's great, isn't it? Isn't it good? Yeah, no problem. So, but that's what we fall into the trap of trying to be pressure groups and all that sort of stuff and arguing, and surely they'll see the sense. But it's a mental model problem. It's not how good your argument is. Your argument is good and holds water and is well researched. It's a mental model problem. It's not your argument. Your argument is good and sound. You are saying the right things. So then we've got to try a different approach to this. So the next one is we can use coercive. So if we're in charge and we have power over people, we can make them do what we want. It doesn't change their mind, but it will make them do stuff. But we don't have coercive power over these institutions. We don't have coercive power over these social workers and all that stuff. So it doesn't really work for us. When I had a proper job, this is how I used to work though. And this is your point earlier actually. So I'd say to my team, oh, I'd like you to do this. And they'd say, Simon, that's a stupid idea. I'd like you to do it anyway. Simon, it's a stupid idea. Please, I'd like you to do it. And they'd go, oh, just do it because he'll just shut up then. And then they'd do it. And then I'd move on to the next shiny thing that I got excited about. And what do you think they did when I moved on to the next shiny thing? What do you think they did?
Forgot the last thing.
And what did they do about the last thing?
Stop doing it.
So yeah, stop doing it. Yeah, that's it. Forgot it, yeah. He's forgotten about that. So we'll just go back to what we think is the right thing to do. So coercion doesn't work either. And we've known this since the 1960s. This is just not human beings. If you tell them you have to do this and they don't believe it, they'll do it only so far as it takes not to get punished or to get whatever reward you're offering them. But we don't believe it. We haven't changed our thinking. Well, again, the psychology will be a bit dodgy on that.
But you can also influence the system. For example, you can just change two indicators in performance indicators. One indicator will be like person satisfactions, level of satisfactions with services.
Yeah.
And from this point of view, you integrate the person's view in the
Yeah.
performance. Another one can be performance indicators for the staff, let's say, like innovative solutions for solving the problems, and just include some awards for that.
Yeah. So you've changed the system, though. You haven't inspired people to do that. You've actually changed something in the system to make that happen. And that's the key. So it's not how inspirational the leader is does the leader change the system? Does she or he actually do something? That's that superintendent versus the mental health team leader thing. So the thing that actually works, this is from some research from Chin and Ben. They were testing, how do you get teachers to teach differently? Because there's always new research coming out about the best way to teach young people. And but a lot of teachers ignore it because they do what they've always done. They've done what they've always been taught, a bit like GPs. Well, I was taught that 30 years ago, so leeches is the answer, that sort of stuff. So, yeah. So, but we all do it. This is what I've always done, so this is what I'll do. So they were testing all this stuff out, and they found the best way of getting someone to change their thinking and therefore their behavior and their actions was what we call normative, which Bob referred to earlier, where people see and experience something for themselves. So they actually feel it tangibly themselves, not in a report, not written, not told to them by someone else, but actually experience it. And that's what we've done, where it's been really successful. The three things that I found work really well in these systems are to get the leaders to do all three is perfect, but at least one of them. Go and sit with a family and talk to them about what matters to you, about how we should work with you. Then speak to the person in question that actually would like some support, however we want to do that, and that takes some doing sometimes. What matters to you about how we should work with you and what matters to you in life. Now, the idea is to get the leaders to be in tears. That's really, really helpful. If they are crying, you have got some progress. Because what they'll hear is all the stuff you talk about. Well, you just done the bare minimum. You give me stuff that is absolutely no interest to me. I just want to look after and support my child in a way that makes sense to them, but you're making me do all this stuff. Horrible things they hear, and that's good. You want them to hear horrible things. So you want them to speak directly to the individuals who are there to support, or the families. Secondly, you can do for videos. That's called quasi-normative. A video of someone speaking openly about their experience is almost as impactful. But when I ask leaders to do this, and Julie, you experienced this with your team, didn't you? There's always a reluctance. Oh, right, we have to actually speak to people. Okay, sugar. So they'll try and find reasons not to. So you've really got to hold their feet to the fire. Let's come and do it. Come up and have a chat. Give them some questions to ask, because they'll ask bonkers ones otherwise. How are things for you? How was my staff member when they came to see you? Useless questions. What matters to you about how we should work with you is a good question. What matters to you in life? What does a good life look like too? And then I also ask them, ask the family and ask the individual, what are your strengths? What are you good at? And that puts them in tears as well, because always there's loads. What are your networks? And that's an interesting one, because sometimes you hear, the nursing team are my network, which is not what you want to be happening, but that's what the leader. And then any human being will think, that's not right. We need to help this person have some friends and actually a community around them. It's very powerful. So if you can only get them to do that thing, try and get them to do that. The second thing that works really well is to get them to do a file review. So get them to drag someone's details, all from health, all from social care, and go through and have a look at that person's journey. And you get them to answer a couple of questions. What matters to the person? Because often it's not in there. Did the person achieve what matters? Usually no. And how many assessments were done? How many people were involved? How many times did the person or family have to tell their story? Just those simple questions. It takes them about half an hour and they're going, this is awful. This is awful. Again, hold their feet to the fire. And what they might say to you is, yeah, that's a one-off. That's not what normally happens. Cool, pick another one.
Do that in your own organisations to begin with. This is years ago. There was, before the Borough Court scandal, there was scandals over children's services. So, and in England, we got rid of the institutions earlier than we did for adults, although we still got some. We've still got too many. I was headhunted to go to Birmingham after a scandal in a Catholic institution, and I went and looked for the files associated with these kids and all the other kids that Birmingham had placed around the country in different places. It was astounding. The only place I could find files was in the finance department because people were just paying bills.
Okay.
But the other side of the coin was that there were these bulging filing cabinets. You couldn't shut the doors, and some of the files were this thick, and they were full of assessments that had never been implemented.
Yeah.
That's the simple story. People were assessed to death, but nobody did anything with it.
So that's the type of learning you want the leaders to have. But it's a great, we can do it in our own organisations as well, just see how we help or hinder. But there's so much learning that comes out of that. And get them to pick their own files as well. Don't give them files. What's the danger if you say give a leader 5 files to look at? What might they think? Yes, exactly. And we're very quick as humans to notice that. So pick whatever you want at random, and they pick their own. It's what the psychologists call valid data. So the person, if they've chosen the data themselves, they see it as more real than if you've given it to them. And they'll always find horrendous stuff, always. And encourage them not to pick really, really horrendous stories or really good ones. Just pick a typical one, and because that's where the system's really going to town. Just the typical, every single time we don't let the social worker think differently, every single time we give that box, every single time we force people to use these criteria, whatever it is. And just get them to talk out what they've learned, what they've done. And then the third thing is to go into the system and talk to the social workers, nurses, team leaders, and ask them what wastes your time and what stops you doing what matters to people, and just hear what they say. Because actually a lot of people in the system will, I've got to fill in 85 forms, I spend all my time assessing rather than helping people, I didn't go to college to do this, all this sort of stuff. And then a lovely question to then ask is, what does the system pay attention to? If I've done my assessments on time, how many, have I closed cases? Have I done this, that and the other? Not have I made a difference to anyone's life? And that together gets the leaders thinking a bit, maybe there's something else we need to be doing here. But that's what normative looks like. They've experienced it themselves. And you want them to go home in tears. Aim for tears. And then quickly, and this is important to do relatively quickly, is to give them what's called a concrete alternative. So instead of that, why don't we try 10 in a different way? Here's our thinking around how we want to do that. And I'll show you some example principles and stuff you can use. Because if you don't do it quickly, you've created a cognitive dissonance. So I thought something was true, and now I realize it's not, because I've spoken to families, I've spoken to individuals, And if you don't give them an alternative, they're going to go home in tears. They're going to look in the mirror, and this is your point from earlier, Liz, and they're going to try and find a rationalizing way out of this problem. So they'll go, yeah, but the government makes me, or there's no other way, or there's no providers that can do it that way, so I have to carry on doing it the same way. And that's not them being evil, that's them protecting their mental health, because you can't go on for very long doing something you know is causing harm. It really upsets people, unless you're a sociopath, but they're unlikely to be sociopaths. So as quickly as possible, say, right, instead of that, let's try the next one that comes through the door. Let's try and do it differently. And that's quite low risk for them. You're not saying we want you to change your entire system tonight. We're saying we're going to try a different way of working and see what we learn. So that way, anyone who's thinking, oh yeah, it'll cost more, it won't work, you can't possibly do this. Oh, actually, this is working. And then keep them very attached to that. And then you do another one, and then you help them. Right, now you see it works. What are the key things we need to do to change our system for everyone like this? And they can produce some stupid project plan at that stage if they want to. But Julie just did it, which is quite cool. Oh, we'll change all that. Some leaders aren't quite as brave, so they've got to go on that journey, courageous. But what you've done then is you've taken them on a psychological journey. You've made it really clear to them the system doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because what's in their heads. Then you give them the concrete alternative to try. And they try, oh, great, this works a lot better. Obviously, it sounds very simple in this room. It's very messy and very hard for everyone involved, but is the most effective way of actually getting the system to change. Because we're basing on what we know about human nature. We're mainly good people. But we have a lot of assumptions. Our evolution has taught us to have lots of pattern recognition, assumptions and stuff. Well, that's got stripes and big teeth. I'll keep away from that. That's how it's hammered into us. Performance indicators are the only way of making sure we get quality. That's a pattern they've recognized. You've got to help them unlearn that.
You can advocate for that. For example, so self-advocacy groups, because they need to integrate the, let's say, level of satisfaction of persons with the services,
So
that can be achieved, I do think. Gentle teaching is very nice, but anyway, we need to think how to change the system.
exactly.
And this gentle teaching even will be very important if we integrate in the education curriculum of social workers.
Yeah.
I don't know if here in England people have these internships, like students and so on. Maybe they need to go to see these bad practices sites in order that, to change their attitudes, because that is very important, to change their attitudes. If
it helps, you don't even have to go anywhere else. So there's a very clever Japanese gentleman who said, if you don't look under someone else's bonnet to find out what's wrong with your car, which I thought was a lovely description. All you need them to do is to study their own system, and they'll see it for themselves. It might help them to think, give them a bit of courage that someone else is doing it. But if you can get the self-advocacy groups to get the leaders, come and spend a bit of time seeing what's happening, that's very powerful too.
Yeah, because self-advocates have this power. They can influence, I think.
But it's very interesting, isn't it? Because Joe and Simon and I trying to get the Welsh Government to do this. Their defence mechanisms against it.
It's very...
Everybody's too busy.
Yeah.
We're under financial pressure. There's going to be an election next year.
Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Nobody will do it. If you can go out and get somebody to do it, we're not getting in the way.
Yes.
But I'm still wondering, do you have here, for example, these, let's say, budget hearings? Can you be involved in, let's say, budget hearings like with self-advocates and integrate that in some way?
Potentially, yeah. I worry it's still rational in that rational space, though. You end up in a sort of argument. You want the leaders to realise for themselves, she or he, to go, gosh, I hadn't realised that was going on. So you can maybe get them involved beforehand. Come and have a look what's actually happening in this family.
Approach, influencing on rational, moral, and so on. Like from all the sides.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The most effective will be the normative, but don't stop doing the other stuff. But it's making sure you're putting energy into how can I get a leader to spend time seeing this for themselves? And that's the sort of key question. How do you get them curious? And actually, your point was very well made about show them case studies, show other people around the world doing it. So actually, if you come in for just 2 hours with us, we'll have a look at how our system works and see what they learn.
Maybe in the club, there are some good examples here, like Julie's example.
Yeah.
Just let people come and discuss on those issues. Create a room for that, and show the best experience.
And if there's something about us experiencing it ourselves is cool. So if they come and see it working on the ground, that's good. Sorry, Charlie.
I was going to say it's interesting, but what you were saying there, Bob, about the work we try to do with the Welsh Government, not only is it rational, and not only could they not disagree with any of it, it's their legislation actually screams this is what we ought to be doing, and we still never got anywhere.
Yeah. So I'll just show you some principles and stuff you can use. Sorry, go back this way. It might be helpful. You can't really read those, but so I work with a leader and heads of service and frontline, and we did this, we studied it, we spent 3 days digging the system up, and then they came up with these principles. I'll read them to you because the light's not so good. So they wrote, listen to understand what matters. I need my glasses on, sorry. Getting old. Listen to understand what matters. Don't just give what we've got. And they were really keen. They wanted that second half of the sentence in there. They wanted to show what they didn't want to do as well as they, because they just gave whatever they had. And they was really strong. So they wanted to get away from that. Build on people's own strengths, networks, and community. So actually, don't assume service is the right thing, or the only thing, if at all useful. Design work against predictable demand. That's just a posh way of saying, predictably, people want to have good relationships. They want to have good contribution. They want to have networks of people that want to, so it's predictable stuff that human beings want. So make sure our system will do that. Expertise up front, so you don't go through 14 people before you speak to someone who can actually help you. Pull in, don't refer or hand off, because they were bouncing around all over the place. Only do value work. And then proportionate, purposeful, person-centered recording, proportionate, purposeful, person-centered practice. So if we can't do anything because we've assumed service is the right thing, how do we help someone build their own network and become confident in themselves? And problem solve and unblock, never say never. So don't accept nonsense. And this is adult social care. And their residential settings and their nursing home settings just started going like that. Far, far less people in those environments because they were actually listening and building on networks and stuff like that. So, here's some results. Can you read it? And this is the stuff that really does matter to the leaders, unfortunately. How much money will it save me? Will it reduce demand and all that sort of stuff? And as you know, it will. It will. And then what people said. It's all the stuff you know happens. But having a set of principles giving to the leaders is really helpful. It helps them stick to what they've said. Otherwise, people start making stuff up and rules start to come in, because you don't need any rules when you've got that, and that's what they found. There's some legal stuff they had to do, but otherwise, yeah. So, rational can dig people's heels in, and unfortunately we fall into that trap a lot. If I just say sensible things, people will just listen to me. Human beings are not sensible fundamentally, so just remember that. Coercive we don't have the opportunity to do anyway. Normative is solve the problem of how do we get a leader curious enough to spend time in the work and then want to do something about it. The good thing is you're not starting from scratch with the answers. The moment they go, bloody hell, this is awful, what can we do instead? Strap in. We can show you exactly what to do instead. You've been doing this for years, so it's not as if you're making stuff up from scratch and you know it works. So the hard bit is just getting them to spend time realizing that the current assumptions are wrong in their system.